welcome to Wire, the show all about your racehorse stable, the MyRacehorse stable. If you're new to us today, we want to tell you how you can get involved and become an owner in one of these wonderful racehorses that we are about to show you. I'm Christina Blacker, your host, joined by Nick Hines, the Sarge of both TVG and MyRacehorse. We are here in the TVG studios, and Sarge, as I look back on the month that we've had with MyRacehorse, dominance, powerful wins are sort of the words that come to mind. The MyRacehorse horses have been performing this month.
Well, it certainly has been the most wonderful time of year, and of course, post the holiday season. But no doubt a wonderful way to start the new year with some nice developing three-year-olds. And that's what you hope for when you go to these sales, whether it be you're buying yearlings, your weanlings, in fact, two-year-olds in training. I think the objective is to try to find those Saturday horses. And I think MyRacehorse, they've landed in a pretty sweet spot here to begin 2022.
We're going to talk a lot about that throughout the show. It's everyone's dream as a horse owner to have a horse that might be on the path to the Kentucky Derby, to the Kentucky Oaks. More on that coming up in just a little bit. When we last left you last month, we talked a little bit about the Ocala Showcase, the first ever event of its kind in Ocala, Florida. Over 300 of you were able to be there. We thank you for coming and for enjoying having a look at many of the MyRacehorse young runners. But if you weren't able to be there, here's a little recap at what happened in the Ocala Showcase.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Great to see such a great turnout for this event. I'm happy to see the grandstands full here.
Throughout the whole series of sets, raise your hand, shout out. I'm happy to answer any questions.
If you're not noticed, I mean, just backtrack and see all you guys as completely new to them, but they'll soak it up, and we'll see how she performs down the lane here this morning. But we all really like the filly. I think she's a lot of potential.
I love meeting other MyRacehorse owners and getting to hear their story. But today, the most exciting part was seeing the transformation in some of the horses from December to now, how they're turning into athletes and they're really growing up.
So I really like Tufnell. He's really pretty. And of course, I have my favorites, the big gray.
Yep, Splash Out. She's a real nice filly. She's been picking it up.
I've learned so much through this experience.
This event today was really special. I like seeing the horses run over the track. I think the question and answer sessions, wherever you got a hold of some of the folks, they were very special. When I was up at Saratoga this year and went to the sale and I got the catalog, so I know there's a few of the horses that we saw today came from that, so I'm looking forward to tracking them through their careers.
It's just great. It gives more access than I could ever experience.
I've been in the horse business my whole life. I've never been to Ocala. It's one of the horse capitals of the world. And so for everybody that was able to be there, I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed just watching the video, learning a little bit about the 11 horses that were showcased there for everybody who came out. And a special thanks to the pre-trainers and to the horsemen on the farm as well. King's Equine, Raul Reyes, Bridalwood, Paul Sharp, the Peyton Training Center for helping to make this event possible. And Nick, I know you spent a lot of time in Ocala, not only for these types of showcase type events, taking a look at the young horses in training, but of course the two-year-old in training sales, which we are ramping up for right now.
Well, it is ideally located right there in Central Florida for the Ocala breeder sales. They do a tremendous job, but again, we want to thank the Ocala Breeders Association for allowing that opportunity on behalf of all of us at MyRacehorse. It's the perfect setting. Essentially, it's a sales setting, but for the investors, for the partners, and future potential partners, I think this is the perfect opportunity and essentially a segue to getting into horse ownership. Much like buying a car, for example. I mean, you want to kind of go in, you can't necessarily ride these horses, but you can go in for a test drive and kind of get to know them, get to know the personalities and the reasoning why certain horses were purchased.
Absolutely, and what a great job all of those horsemen do. They really are the foundation, the building block of this training and getting horses ready to send them in to their trainers at the racetrack. So we hope you enjoyed it as much as we have just in recapping the Ocala Showcase. Okay, time to get into the wins of the month. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had some dominant victories. We showed you several of them back on the January show. Let's go to Forbidden Kingdom. We're going to stay here in Southern California with regard to these wins. This is the Grade 2 San Vicente with Kentucky Derby points on the line. Forbidden Kingdom was impressive at first asking, Sarge. He's always been a performer, but this was clearly his standout best race.
Well, he's certainly showing up for every dance, but he posted up a career-best Beyer speed figure of a 94. This son of American Pharaoh out of the 5-star daymare, Just Louise, impressed. Major props going out to our Hall of Fame trainer, Richard Mandel, of course, horse and owned in a partnership with Spendthrift Farm. He was a FASIG select purchase. 497 partners in on Forbidden Kingdom, and had to have been grinning ear to ear, and a horse that's being pointed for the San Felipe the early part of March, trying to attain more Kentucky Derby points. But again, Juan Hernandez, he's been on this horse more often than not in the mornings, getting to know him, but they changed up the bit. They put a Houghton bit on him to enable him to have a little more control as far as the rider is concerned. But I think the bottom line with this horse, as we had said in previous shows, getting his feet right. And I love the fact that we're getting more of the better weather months now.
Right.
And we're hoping that as he stretches out, he'll be able to get out there, rest, relax, and then show his stuff coming for home. It's exciting.
Those are the little nuances, the finer points of training that you'll get from a Hall of Famer like Richard Mandela, and it all comes together with a big victory like that. From the West Coast to the East Coast, another exciting 3-year-old that was dominant in victory. This is In Due Time, the son of Not This Time. Trained by Kelly Breen for Edge Racing, and a big victory at Gulfstream Park. Went a little wide as they turned for home, but boy, did he pull clear, winning margin 5 3/4 of a length on the wire.
Well, and there's about $1 million worth of horse flesh plus behind him. In Due Time, and just his 3rd career start. Second start back off the respite. This was an ultra-impressive victory for a horse that posted up a 92 Beyer speed figure. He also was noted as the Ragozin speed figure of the week, earning a career best at 9. And In Due Time, certainly a horse that remains a lot of attention. We want to welcome in on behalf of Edge, and a congratulations going out to my good friend, our West Coast racing manager as well with MyRacehorse in Joe Moran. Outstanding work as a racing manager. It's great to work in concert with him. But 10 partners in with In Due Time. So again, that segue from horse ownership with MyRacehorse to Edge coming to fruition here for a horse who was purchased for just $95,000 last year as a 2-year-old in training. And I'll tell you, the sire, Not This Time, out there at TaylorMade, he's been very good to us at MyRacehorse and Edge Racing. That
is pretty exciting at that price point, and congrats to those 10 partners that are involved with In Due Time. Kelly Breen, as mentioned, is the trainer of this chestnut colt, and our Andy Bancone had a chance to catch up with him in South Florida to talk about his progression and that recent victory you just saw.
Joining us now is trainer Kelly Breen to talk about his horse In Due Time. Kelly, now that you've had a couple days to reflect on his first performance, what are your thoughts?
He's a nice, really nice colt. He's kind of on the runs a little hot side. I think that's part of the family. Yes, this time it is the same breeding style that I have for the same set of owners for Edge Racing. And they were in the stalls next to each other. They both run a little hot. They both were playing with each other. One is I think he's graded stakes placed on the grass. This horse, if he didn't take to the dirt like he did last time, grass might have been in his future. But the two of them, big, nice, strong colts. In Due Time, maybe a little stronger, even though he just turned 3, than our 4-year-old companion. Just a really nice horse, long striding. Probably needed his first race back when we ran him at Gulfstream Park, going 6 furlongs. Needed the distance, and really performed well. I don't want to say over and above what I was thinking that he was going to do, but maybe I had my expectations that he was going to run better sprinting his first race back. With the added distance, it was just right on key. Everything worked out. It was a dream trip, and he showed his stuff.
Clearly he handled that added distance well. How do you feel about him going 2 turns?
Going back to some of his workouts, he ran well at sprinting at Monmouth Park, and we were trying to see how he would do in workouts for getting the distance. And Paco came to work him maybe 2 times up at Palmettos, and he relaxed so much. I was kind of like, I was looking for a more aggressive workout, and Paco would come back and he says, 2 turns, 2 turns. So he won, the allowance race last week was a 1-turn mile. I think he'll just thrive over 2 turns. The longer the distance, he is a big colt. Does have a really nice long stride, and if we can get races to set up like it did for him last week, the sky's the limit.
Between the time he broke his maiden at Monmouth to now, what have you noticed in terms of changes in his size or changes in his mental state? What have you noticed?
His demeanor, even though that I say that he runs a little hot and he wants to be an aggressive sort of horse, that even in his workouts, his demeanor of being on the track he's push button. He has gears. He can start out and just go, wrap off 12 furlongs, 12-second furlongs, 12-second furlongs, and you ask him and he'll throw in that really high-speeded 11 and change, or almost like 11 and 1 or 11 and flat in some of his workouts. And it was really impressive. Impressive to see that usually when a horse works as fast as a minute, they have to start out really fast and they don't finish up. And he's just the opposite. Almost to say of going back to this time as a turf horse, that they don't usually pick it up at the end of their races. And this horse, he picked it up at the end of his workouts.
A very exciting horse, to say the least. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thank you.
Andy, thank you very much for that, and to Kelly Breen as well. I first met Kelly Breen when I was working at Monmouth Park for their elite meet that they had. I think it was 2014. Really educational trainer, someone that I think would fit very well and has fit very well into the MyRacehorse organization. You learn a lot listening to him.
Well, certainly do. He alluded to a horse in that conversation, a horse, This Time, that when In Due Time was purchased, kind of a cookie-cutter version of This Time, a horse that rattled off 5 straight wins for Edge Racing last year, including the Grade 3 Kent, on a little bit of a rest and reprieve to come back. But In Due Time, either being pointed for the Fountain of Youth, I believe it's March 5th, or potentially, because that's a quick turnaround, or March 12th, the Tampa Bay Derby, to earn some of those Kentucky Derby points. And I also wanted to congratulate the Medallion Racing, Phil Shelton and his team, recently partnering up with us with In Due Time. So it should be hopefully a magical road toward that first Saturday in May.
They are great partners. I see some very full winner circles in the future with
Absolutely.
MyRacehorse and Medallion teaming up in there. Thanks to Kelly Breen again for the time. Let's talk a little bit more about the horses on the road to the Kentucky Derby. Now, of course, MyRacehorse has already had the roses draped over one of their runners with Authentic back in 2020. Nothing like it, and it just makes you want more. But to put this in perspective, in 2019, there were 20,000 foals born. Only 20 of them will make it into the starting gate for the Kentucky Derby. So, Sarge, the fact that we're talking about 3 or 4 horses that are on that path right now is extremely significant.
Well, it certainly is. And if I could chime up the M&M music in the background, one chance, one opportunity. I mean, this is it. Essentially, each race counts in large amounts. And I think in the case of Chasing Time, coming off of a dazzling allowance victory, of course, this next step for him, he's kind of a throwback when you look at the times and often that he's actually raced. He's not a horse that, in today's genre of trying to get that Kentucky Derby horse or trying to get to that first Saturday in May, you tend to space the races. You're looking at sheet numbers. You're trying to kind of correlate a path. But for Chasing Time, trainer Steve Asmussen, I mean, he's been full steam ahead. And looking at that victory last out with over 3,240 shareholders, Chasing Time is being pointed for the Rebel. He comes off a career best Buyer speed figure and Ragozin Thorograph as well. But again, being represented by Not This Time. He's had 5 career starts, Christina, 2 wins, 2 seconds, but certainly going to get the test, the litmus test, in Stakes Company in this next step.
He's coming into it the right way, though. That last victory at Ocala on the 14th of January was just effortless for him. Nearly 8 lengths, a winner. Forbidden Kingdom, back to him. We showed you this victory a little while ago in the San Vicente, and he's taking those steps forward. He's a high-energy type, Sarge, from what I'm seeing in the works and everything in the morning. He's not showing it to you right now in the barn, but trust me, you put the saddle and the bridle on this guy, he is ready to rock.
Well, he's always been, he's been one of those types of horses, even as a yearling when purchased out of the Phasig Select sale. Kind of playing his cards close to his vest, and I think that's one thing we mostly appreciated. And if you look back at American Pharoah as a stallion, when he got hot, namely with turf types, this is a horse, when we evaluated him at the sale, he certainly gave us that dirt vibe. Now, granted, when you say, hey, did you think he was getting on the Derby trail? I would say chances were favorable in our minds. So it's worked out thus far. Let's hope that that next step will be a good one for him going onward and upward.
How about Ironworks? So we've talked a lot about In Due Time out of that victory on the 4th of February, but he was in the same race. He finished 3rd that day, and to me, looks like a horse that's learning, that's just now really putting it all together.
Nail on the head. This is a 2-year-old purchased out of the Ocala Breeders' Sale last year out of the Summer Mayberry consignment. She does a wonderful job, wonderful horsewoman, and 2,000 plus partners in Ironworks. He is being pointed for the Tampa Bay Derby, earned a 79 Beyer speed figure. You mentioned learning, took a lot of dirt. His gallop out was huge, and he is a horse that, for trainer Todd Pletcher in a partnership with Spendthrift, son of distorted humor, he's going to show up big time next out.
A little bit more on In Due Time. Again, another son of Not This Time, who certainly has been good to the MyRacehorse owners. That 5 3/4 length victory that we showed you at Gulfstream last time out. But the next test for him, Sarge, has to be 2 turns. You've got that nice victory at the 1-turn mile that they run at Gulfstream. Many racetracks, you'll get a 2-turn, 1-mile configuration. But I like that progression and a horse that can develop in that way, in that they extend themselves at the distance at the 1-turn mile. Some horses will go on, some horses won't. This guy looks like he will, especially with that kind of pedigree.
No, absolutely. And I think that it just comes down to, if you look at Kelly Breen's interview there with Andy being Cohn, he has been anticipating this move and reflecting back on the victory at the 1-turn mile. Both Joe, myself, we were more inclined to say, hey, Kelly, don't you feel more comfortable coming back at 3/4? He goes, no, we must run. And I'm like, okay, well, you know who's going to be in there. And he was bullish and, you know, paid dividends. So now we're in a real good position. You know, and again, it's exciting to have a couple of additional partners to come along the ride with us.
We want to talk a little bit more about the Kentucky Derby, because now that you have these horses that are on that path and it's officially known as the road to the Kentucky Derby, how do you make your way into the starting gate for the first Saturday in May the 7th this year? As I mentioned, 20,000 foals born back in 2019. Only 20 of them can actually line up in that gate. So how do you get a spot?
Yeah, what's that percentage? Well, it's simply, you know, it's interesting because when you reflect back on how the whole process went as far as Kentucky Derby was concerned, but if you go back to the year, I think it was 1972 when Reva Ridge won the Kentucky Derby. Incidentally, a long story short, my father had a horse on the Derby Trail that year. The earnings rule went into play about that time, the following year, when Secretariat ended up winning the Kentucky Derby. Not that it mattered, because who wanted to run against Big Red? But the point system evolved based on races and stationing races in certain points on a Derby trail that would allow horses to earn their way in. For example, the early point races were 10s, you have your 50s, and then essentially you're going to run into your 100s. But we know that based on the next step, Tampa Bay Derby, for example, or the Rebel, you're looking at 50 to 100 points. And so the points are basically there for horses to earn their way a spot into the starting gate.
So essentially, you can look at the KentuckyDerby.com website. You can see where these horses, and they are updated each and every weekend as far as the points. And come that first Saturday in May, that week when we get to entry time, just draw a line at 20. Those are the 20 horses that do make their way into the starting gate. So as Sarge mentions, we're still in the 10-point races right now. We're just graduating into the 50-point races. And I say that 10 points to the winner, 50 points to the winner of the next races. They do award points 1st through 4th. So you'll get 10, 4, 2, 1 at this stage we're at right now. And you'll see a similar breakdown in the next step. And then those final steps, those final prep races, the Santa Anita Derbies, the Florida Derbies, 100 points to the winner. You win one of those races, you won second, you're pretty much guaranteed a spot.
The basic threshold, I think, for number 20, and again for the 50 on upward, 50, 20, 10, 5, and then you get up to the 100, 40, 20, 10. If you can get to the point in which you've earned 30 to 40, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to make your way in. And of course, you know, in today's day and age, you know, horses, they're like humans. It's about, you know, they could be that strawberry overnight, as the late, great Charlie Whittingham once said. So that's why it's so crucial. And as a reminder, and I'm sure many of you already realize that Kentucky Derby, you have to be a 3-year-old. You can't be an older horse, can't be a 2-year-old. So this is that one chance opportunity.
I like the idea of putting that soundtrack in. Maybe we can add that to the show a little bit later on down the line. We're going to talk now about our surprise of the month. We actually have a couple of these to discuss. And the first is a work from Naismith. So I'll be honest, this is not a horse I was familiar with until I started studying for the show. And I went on the app just to see if there were any shares available because I was so excited
He's
about
a really
this work.
cool horse,
There
too.
aren't. If you are in Naismith, you have been patient. He's had to spend some time on the sidelines. He is back in the Richard Mandela barn. I really feel that your patience is going to be rewarded because I love this work.
Well, and indeed, this is a horse that, being by Medaglia d'Oro, he was a 2-year-old in training purchase. If you look at his last running line, he faced arguably one of the most phenomenal sprinters that we've seen over the past few years in Flightline. So was sent to the sideline. The one thing about Naismith, there was nothing in particularly wrong with him. He had some underlying foot problems, and then, I think it was just a matter of getting through a growth spurt. And now he's matured, he's evolved. He looks tremendous in the flesh. And, when you talk to Papa Mandela and kind of relating and having that conversation with our racing manager, West Coast, Joe Moran, there's quite a bit of excitement and buzz. So when you say surprise, he's a newly turned 4-year-old, he's still a maiden, but it still would be a surprise if he were to come back as good as I look and see what he's up to. So it's great to see him back in action. And I know they're thinking potentially coming back in a sprint dirt race or potentially a grass race.
Plenty of upside with Naismith. So good luck to all of his owners as Richard Mandela continues to get him ready for that return to the races. Okay, from the surprise of the month to the work of the month. Back to Forbidden Kingdom again. We're talking a lot about this Son of American Pharaoh. You have to love this out of a victory, a big work.
Well, he came back in a big way as far as the breeze is concerned. And I would say that as far as the best of 21, a 46-4, he was pretty aggressive this morning. And this was 12 days removed coming out of the Grade 2 San Vicente. So, but he's generally been a bullet type. You certainly wouldn't want to get into a gunfight with Forbidden Kingdom. He's rattled off multiple bullets throughout his career. In fact, going into the San Vicente was a best of 9, bullet, best of 6, 35-3. But he's a high cruiser. And I think the idea is that, and I've been around horse, and I'm sure you, obviously being a daughter of Frank Oliveras, who rode with some of the all-time greats, but your husband, of course, Dan, that there are certain horses that train themselves.
Right.
So when Forbidden Kingdom gets out into the racetrack, I think he's already programmed into what he wants to do. Papa Mandela, not known to breeze horses in 46-4. You would think the Bob Baffert-esque type work, but I think in Forbidden Kingdom's case, he's a natural. And, from day one, we felt that he would be. The key is going to be as he stretches out, can he ration that speed? Going through the first turn, will he come off the bridle? That's going to be the key. Or is he just one of those horses that's so brilliant that's going to get out in front, nobody can get around him? So most definitely for me, the work of the month based on how easily he did that workout.
He is all racehorse. It's just a matter of controlling all of that talent, and that is what Richard Mandela is tasked with. Let's take a look at some of the upcoming races that you can look forward to. As we say all the time, write these in your calendar with pencil. Things can change with racehorses at any time. Things can change with the racing schedule, track to track at any time. But for a couple of these horses, we're looking at some stakes races, most notably those races on March the 5th. That's going to be one of the biggest days that the Stronach Group puts on in quite some time. 15 stakes between the East Coast and the West Coast. So you're looking at runners that are targeting some of the best Saturday races that we have to offer.
Yes, and a couple of new shooters in that group, namely, I Can't Hush This for trainer Tom Amos at the fairgrounds, a horse that will be essentially locking horns against an edge runner, son of Tappet and Tepu. But Quantum Theory, looking for some development there. As we alluded to, Chasing Time, Forbidden Kingdom, going to Vegas is being targeted for the 5th of March. And, of course, she's coming back off a brief respite from a tremendous campaign and having won the Grade 1 Rodeo and then coming out of that Breeders' Cup.
Good luck to all the owners. If you have a horse listed on the graphic there with an upcoming race, as we look forward to the next couple of weeks with the MyRacehorse stable. Looking ahead now to our Aftercare Spotlight of the Month. We've shown you some great stories over the last few months here on Wire to Wire, but today we're going to check in with Nielest. Now, this is a horse that never really performed. He never really got it together on the racetrack. Rather than sending him down the class ladder in terms of some low-level claiming races, MyRacehorse decided just to go ahead and retire him. And big props to Karen Graniger. She retires quite a few horses. She has him now, and he is living his best life out here in California.
Well, he was a horse that was one of the early on MyRacehorse in a partnership with Battleborn, a stable that obviously I manage. But Nielest has always been one of the most charismatic individuals. And, you know, he would tend to bite quite a bit. You know, I've had conversation with Karen. She could literally create her own documentary based on Nielest himself, but now he's kind of evolved into the jumps. He's son of the late great pioneer of the Nile. His biggest issue, he had feet issue in his career. He actually retired sound, but it was one of those, it was chronic. But Karen, she's the best. If you go to social media on Twitter, @Glorious Alliance, he has a friend, Hackleton, who's a former racehorse himself, but the stories she has to share are, I mean, they're just amazing. And children's storybook is coming to mind.
She shares some great content on her Twitter feed, so be sure to follow, because not only will you get those updates on Nielest, but some of the others that she has retired. He's 7 years old now. Good luck to Nielest. I love seeing him over the little Cavallettis there out in the paddock. That's how all of us learned. When you learn to jump, that's what you learn to jump over the Cavallettis. I can remember my little 2-point on the pony. So congratulations to Karen for all the great work that she does, and a big thank you from everyone at MyRacehorse for that. Time for our stable spotlights. We've each had the opportunity to pick a horse. I'm going to pick a horse that actually isn't quite at the racetrack just yet, but I'm excited about this filly. Her name is Balletic. She is a daughter of Into Mischief. She will be trained by Todd Pletcher. She'll be into the barn in the coming weeks or months or so. These are young horses, remember, so this is about the time that they would be transitioning from those farms in Ocala, like the Ocala Showcase, on to the traditional racetrack training scenario. This is a great video with our GoPro. What's it like to ride Balletic? Well, this is exactly what it's like. And Sarge, looking at her photos and even looking at this, I'm struck by how kind of smooth she is, how feminine she is, how refined she looks already for a young horse.
I couldn't argue with you on that. She was a $450,000 Phasig Select purchase by MyRacehorse, consigned by TaylorMade. Being by Into Mischief, you know, they, as growthy, scopy as they may get, you point out the fact that she's smooth, very. And I love the balance here, and I think that's the key. I feel like I could almost get right on horseback and
we
ride
could have done that, right?
She probably wouldn't like that, though. But good news is that Battle of Berlin, her sibling, was a recent first out winner at Park. So some positivity there for Balletic, and I think she's a perfect suit for trainer Todd Pletcher, who he's been so wonderful for MyRacehorse. His communication like none other, and you know, putting the horse first, I think that's paramount with us at MyRacehorse. And I wanted to point out the fact also in regard to Michael Behrens and Aftercare, just to kind of step back for a moment with Nielest. And he is all about soft landings and being sure that these horses end up in the right hands. And, you know, if we're having to investigate, you know, a horse that we formerly had to find out, hey, what's the story? It's our job to do so, because the horses are the denominator and, of course, come first and foremost.
I echo those sentiments. Balletic is still available if you'd like to get involved. Check the website, check the app. I was just on this morning, and she will be in Todd Pletcher's barn in the coming weeks. So that's my stable spotlight. Who are you looking at this month?
Well, again, as far as stable spotlights are concerned, I mean, how can you not be excited about In Due Time? You know, this is a kind of a rise in a short amount of time. Trainer Kelly Breen, he's no stranger to the Derby Trail, by the way.
Right.
Having won the Belmont Stakes with a gelding back in the day at Ruler on Ice. And I would have to say that, you know, when purchased last year, I remember being on the grounds at Ocala, a horse that found us on the short notes, and Joe Moran. We got, I guess, especially excited knowing that we had the success with Yes This Time by Not This Time. And this horse kind of fit right into that cookie cutter mold, as I had alluded to earlier. So it's happening. This is a dream, and it's becoming a reality. And I know that it's a long walk down that hallway to kind of quote the great Ric Flair. But I'll tell you one thing. In Due Time, hearing what Kelly Breen had to say, knowing he was bullish about that mile race as opposed to coming back a 3/4 second start back, all I can say, let's get to that next step so we can really start Derby dreaming.
More updates on the app with the In Due Time. Those are coming in the next few weeks for sure. Time for our question of the month. We talked a little bit about the Derby point system, but we're going to take the question completely different direction. Who determines whether a horse is a route horse, meaning a 2-turn horse, or a sprint horse, meaning a 1-turn horse?
Well, it's kind of a loaded question. I think that it ultimately...
I thought the Derby points was hard enough. Now I'm like, another fastball right at you, Sarge.
Well, I mean, when it comes to Derby points, you have facts, right? I mean, you have points, and that's the only way that you can get into the first Saturday in May. But I think when it comes down to who, you have to rely on the trainer. It's much like a coach of a sports team, football, baseball, basketball. But at the same time, you're relying heavily upon your exercise riders and jockeys. I think that sometimes you might think a horse has the ability to get further. For example, the interview with Kelly Bree, and I don't mean to keep coming back to the interview, but Paco Lopez is the one that came back and told Kelly, hey, this horse wants 2 turns. When you look on paper, you look at pedigree, you think, okay, you know, not this time is kind of a rise to prominence, still under the radar, but people are starting to realize. So I think the truth is that the trainer should know, but it's a kind of a
team effort.
It's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
I couldn't agree more. And I like sometimes a jockey that can be really confident, you know, in what they feel about a horse. So right or wrong, in the end, they are feeling that horse out there in competition. They're the only ones that really have that kind of an idea. The exercise rider has a huge input as well, but for them to come back and be confident like that, and Paco Lopez is one of those riders, that really goes a long way. And sometimes they've looked at the pedigree, sometimes they haven't. And I think that can be a good thing. And of course, you want a jockey that's going to do their homework and study, but I think you also want to rely on their intuition and the feel naturally that they have from the horse.
Yeah, I think when you go back and we talked about microshare, for example, Mike Smith rode her first time out. First thing he said when he came back, I understand what we're looking at on paper, but pedigree doesn't always mean that they can get a distance of ground. But when you get a Hall of Fame rider, not to mention, that comes back and says, hey, I think this horse wants 2 turn. But I think the key to getting a route horse, it's like having a good, great horse, is having that ability to exhale. And if they go out, they hold their breath, chances are they're not going to get 2 turns.
Some of us are better at cross country. Some of us are better at sprinting. The horses are exactly the same. For more information on any of the horses that we've talked to you about today, or any of the upcoming horses that will be available for purchase, head to the website, download the app, MyRacehorse. That's going to do it for us here in our February show. We hope you've enjoyed it. For the Sarge, Nick Hines, I'm Christina Blacker. We will see you back here on Wire to Wire from the TVG studios next month. Until then, good luck at the races and good luck in those Derby preps.
Hoorah.